For those of you just joining us, we're going to give everybody else another minute before we get started, okay? Okay, we had a number of emails just come in that people have registered, so I'm going to give them one more minute to hop on, and then we will get started. Okay, it is officially 12:01, so we're going to go ahead and get started to be cognizant of everybody's time. So good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're located. My name is Kelly Boofink, and I would love to welcome you to our Strip Matter Wealth Smart Money webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. Our presentation today is titled Family Wealth Planning, Preparing the Next Generation. Excuse me. For those of you that don't know us, we are Strip Matter Wealth Management Group, a registered investment advisor located in downtown Fort Worth, Texas. We specialize in investment management, financial planning, estate planning, and real estate investing. Not a good time to cough. We've been in business since 2007 and serve clients throughout the United States and overseas. So I have a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. All of you have access to the chat feature. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate and type those in, and we'll be happy to answer those for you. Also, we'll be sending out a replay of today's webinar by email. So if you miss something, don't panic. You'll have the ability to watch this again. And you're welcome to forward these presentations and any of our presentations to your friends and family if you think it would be beneficial. Okay. So today's webinar is meant to be purely educational. Okay. It is not meant to be legal or tax advice. So please talk to your licensed professional before taking action on any of the information in this presentation. And for more information, including our key disclosures, please visit our website at stripmatterwealth.com. So let me introduce our speaker today. John Nersesian is the head advisor of education at PIMCO. He provides advanced wealth management and investment consulting education to financial professionals. He is also a faculty member for the IWI Certified Private Wealth Advisor and Certified Investment and Management Analyst education programs held at Yale University and the University of Chicago. He has 38 years of investment and financial services experience. So without further ado, I am going to hand it off to John.
Well, thanks, Kelly. Thanks to Josh and to the entire Strip Matter team. I really appreciate the opportunity to work with you and to work with your clients today. I hope that we have a productive session. Today's topic is near and dear to my heart. I'm 65 years old, and I'm very fortunate to have, very blessed to have two young children. My son, Daniel, works for the Chicago White Sox. He's 27 years old. He lives in downtown Chicago. My daughter, Margot, she works for Zoom. She is also living in Chicago, working remotely, as you might imagine, working for Zoom. And I will tell you that as a parent, obviously one of my financial goals throughout this life journey has been to accumulate assets, right? To build financial security for our family, to be able to send our kids to school, to be able to retire comfortably, to be able to afford homes and the lifestyle that we all desire to achieve. But at 65 years old, I've got a new focus. One that maybe some of you have experienced as well, which is not necessarily to accumulate more assets, but to ensure that the assets that we've been fortunate enough to accumulate to make sure that they have a productive influence in the lives of our children. I'll bet many of you have seen examples of where successful families have been able to use that wealth productively in their lives and in the lives of their children. I'll bet you've also seen examples where, unfortunately, that hasn't been the case, where the wealth that has been passed from one generation to the next actually had a negative influence on the children and didn't accomplish the goals of the family. Let's see if we can go ahead and advance the slides here. There we go. I love this quote. I'm sure that most of you know who Warren Buffett is, right? One of the world's most successful investors. And he was asked, so Warren, given all your financial success, give us some guidance. What do you think the right thing to do is with whatever that level of wealth is? A massive amount like Buffett's accumulated, or maybe a more reasonable amount like all of us might be dealing with. How much money should I leave my kids? Right? Am I better off helping them out by giving them a lot of money? Am I better off letting them learn on their own by not providing any financial support? And Buffett's answer, I think, was a great one, which is the perfect amount to leave our children is enough money so that they feel empowered to do anything that they want in this world, to pursue their passion, but not so much money that we enable them and give them a sense of complacency where they wind up being enabled or not necessarily pursuing the things in life that might be productive. Here's our agenda for today. I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that many people face. You may be experiencing them personally as well. We'll talk about some best practices, and I'll share with you some resources that might be educational to you. And of course, I encourage you to meet with Kelly, to meet with Josh, to meet with the team, if this topic is of interest to you, as they certainly stand ready to help you advance whatever your objective might be in this very important area. So with that as background, let's jump in. Let's talk about some of the challenges that wealthy families face today. We all want to raise what we consider to be productive children, right? Grounded children. We want to avoid senses of entitlement. We don't want to raise children that are materialistic, children who lack maybe motivation to pursue their passion in this world, children who might become arrogant and entitled because they grew up in a successful family. How do we achieve this goal of leaving our children or helping them develop characteristics that we would define to be positive? We'd love to see our children who are appreciative of the great things that they've been afforded, who are independent, who learn how to fly on their own as opposed to necessarily relying on the support of mom and dad. We'd love to raise children who are modest, either in their success or in the success or wealth that the family has accumulated. This is the goal for many families. I suspect it might be one of yours as well. Now, one of the challenges, of course, is passing on this wealth effectively to that next generation. I'm sure you've seen it. There are a lot of destructive forces at play. So we've accumulated what we think is a pretty reasonable amount of money that we intend to pass on to our children. You know the story. I guess the expression is shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Family number 1 creates the wealth. Family number 2 inherits it. They probably are guilty of conspicuous consumption. The principal amount gets divided among a number of family members, maybe smoothly, maybe with some conflict. Maybe we'd wind up not managing the money well. Maybe we wind up overspending. Taxes, of course, play a big role in the destruction of the wealth, both income taxes on our earnings, investment taxes on our returns, and estate taxes on our wealth when it's transferred. So it's easy to see how what appeared to be an insurmountable amount eventually becomes diminished over time. Here are some of the risks that families face. And by the way, that risk is not necessarily market related. I know the market's volatile today. It's been pretty volatile this past month. And you might assume, gosh, John, the biggest risk to my wealth is that the market declines rather dramatically. The Fed continues to keep their foot on the gas pedal. They raise interest rates and the financial markets suffer a significant decline. The biggest risk for many successful families, believe it or not, is not investment performance. I know that with the Street Matter team's help, you've developed an appropriate financial plan. You've diversified your assets well. You've invested productively to grow your capital over a longer time horizon. The bigger risks that many of us face focus often on family relationships, this fiduciary responsibility that we all have, family governance. It's our ability not necessarily to invest the money productively, it's our ability to manage the wealth among different family members. For those of you who maybe hold a family business, think about that challenge. I've got a couple of kids. Is it appropriate for me to have my children involved in my family business? The answer for some families is yes. That would bring them tremendous joy to see their wealth and their legacy passed on to that next generation. It would bring tremendous pride to some individuals. For others, it's like, no, I didn't build this business for my kids. I want them to pursue whatever their calling might be individually and not necessarily feel beholden to the family business that we've built. Here are the ways in which we can help kids make productive choices. And there are three types of choices that I'm referencing. Number one is financial choices. How do we get them to spend and to save and to invest correctly to build financial security? But we're also referring to intellectual choices. How do we get them to pursue the life that's important to them, where they wind up being individuals who we're proud to call our children? And then how about emotional choices or spiritual choices, where we enable our children to become independent with a sense of confidence, a sense of gratitude, as opposed to some of the negative consequences that wealth can often bring to a successful family? I'll bet some of you have a difficult time talking to your kids about money. Hey, I did. I am 65 years old. My dad grew up in Syria. He came over at the age of 18 and he put himself through school, and he wound up becoming the director of research and development at Bristol Myers, a large pharmaceutical company. But maybe because of his background, or maybe it was a sign of the times back then, we never talked about money. In fact, we were often told that it was inappropriate, impolite to talk about money. And so I didn't really have that advantage to really understand money and its role in the life of our family and what our family's plans might be in terms of how that money would be invested or saved or spent or distributed. I bet many of you probably encounter that same challenge. I know that some studies have been done that suggest that it is a difficult conversation. We can talk to our kids about our favorite sports team. We can talk to them about the TCU Horned Frogs and their success in the Big 12 this year. But what we're sometimes uncomfortable with is talking to our kids about money. The assumption is that the schools take care of that, right? The school system will take care of financial literacy for my children. And that may be evolving. I do see some progress being made on that front. But in many instances, schools are not necessarily embracing that opportunity. Children aren't necessarily taking courses in financial literacy or financial stewardship. There is a responsibility that lies inside the household. Here are the reasons why some people don't talk about financial information with their kids or their relatives. Sometimes we feel it's none of their business. Sometimes they don't feel it's necessary to be transparent. I don't want my children to know how much money I have. I don't want to get into a conflicted argument about money and what my motivations are and what I'm doing with it and how I might eventually distribute it. The important lesson that I'd like to leave you with is the conversation among a family about our wealth doesn't have to specifically disclose or reference dollars. I think the most important conversation that we have with family members is our expectation on what their responsibilities will be, about the habits that we'd like to see our children develop, about the characteristics that we'd like to see them portray. It's understanding the meaning of money that we should be conveying to our children, not necessarily opening the books and sharing with them every dollar or every penny of the financial resources that we've accumulated. Let's talk about some best practices. How do we achieve this goal of financial literacy? How do we raise children who we feel confident in? Boy, wouldn't that be a great point in our lives? I mean, I know we raise our children from birth to age 18. We send them off to school and we kind of hope that they become independent. But how do we do that? How do we get our children to launch in terms of their careers, in terms of their personal relationships, in terms of their financial success or independence? The most important thing that we need to do, number one, is to identify values that are important to us and then to share those expectations with our children. I'll give you some examples on the following slides. We want to teach our children how to manage wealth. We want to encourage children who maybe have the aptitude to embrace an entrepreneurial opportunity, to start their own businesses, to think about the things in this world that they can create or contribute to others. We'd love to instill a sense of independence. How about generosity? I mean, we've accumulated this wealth or success, not necessarily to hoard it ourselves, but how can it serve the purpose of supporting those who are maybe less fortunate? Is this something that we've discussed with our children? Have we modeled that behavior ourselves that might serve as an impetus, a motivator to our children as well? These are the kinds of characteristics that I think many of us would like to pass on to our children. How about this one? Any of you run the bank known as the Bank of Mom and Dad? Whether the children are younger or maybe they've even launched their own young adult careers. Mom, Dad, I need some money. I bet many of you have had that request, and there's always this challenge. Am I helping my kids by providing them with financial support, or am I maybe not helping them by encouraging them to come to me when they need financial resources? I think it's important to communicate expectations with our kids. And I'll give you an example. One methodology is to kind of set those ground rules. Look, we love you. We've supported you by raising you and putting you through school. And we are willing to support you financially in the future, but only under certain conditions. The three things that mom and dad are willing to support financially, things that are important to us, where we're willing to provide the financial resources that may be needed. Number one is education. You want to go back to school, take another class? I'm all in. I believe in education. I believe that's the key to future success. It's an important value of mine, and I'm willing to support that for my children or grandchildren. Number two, anything to do with their health and safety, right down to the point where my children's Uber accounts are linked to my credit card. I want to make sure that they make smart decisions and don't do something that may be not in their best interests by making a poor decision or poor judgment. And then the third thing, of course, that we're willing to support is philanthropy. If they found a cause that they want to support by donating their time or doing research about the cause or contributing their own resources, we'll be right behind them in that effort as well. Now, the kids call and say, gosh, I need new money because my 2-year-old card needs to be upgraded. I'm not sure that that's something that we want to be supporting. I'm not telling you what those ground rules should be. I am encouraging you, however, to think about what those ground rules will be, and then to share those expectations with your children to avoid that scenario where children are constantly and continuously relying on financial support from their parents. There are a couple of things we need to teach our children. There's a great book that I read. I'll give you a couple of good books. Write these down. The first one is called, check out the name. It's a pretty cool name. It's called The Opposite of Spoiled. It was written by Ron Lieber of the New York Times. The Opposite of Spoiled, right? How do we raise children who are not necessarily spoiled despite our family's financial success? The second book, and that's where this comes from, is called Kids, Wealth, and Consequences. It's written by Richard Morris, and he says that we need to teach our children 5 things about money. Now, obviously, the sooner we start, the better, but I think these lessons can last a lifetime. Number one, we need to teach our children how to hear no. We take our kid to the grocery store, the kid's pulling on mom and dad's shirt sleeve, saying, I want to buy this, I want to buy that. And sometimes it's easy just to give in, to stop the negotiations. But sometimes our children do need to learn how to hear no. I think we're helping them in doing that. Number two, they need to understand the difference between wants and needs. When my son was in college, he and his roommates decided to move off campus. And he called me and he said, Dad, I need that really big 85-inch TV that's down in the basement. Can you get that down to me so my roommates and I can watch sports on the weekends? And the answer, of course, was no. Dad, I need that TV. And I used that as an opportunity to teach him the difference between what he wanted and what he needed. And I think that would be an important thing for our children to learn. Third, how to make trade-offs. I don't know, maybe it's not within the budget to buy the child a new car or for them to take an exotic vacation, but maybe a more reasonable expenditure. Don't you find that we have greater appreciation for the things in this world that we're able to obtain when they're not automatically given to us, but when we've set them as a goal and then worked hard for that attainment? It's not just the financial and materialistic benefit that we derive, but there's a sense of satisfaction that comes with that as well. One way to communicate these concepts is to write a family mission statement. It doesn't have to be a novel, just a simple identification of the things that your family stands for. Think about this. If I were to read it, I may not know you personally. If I were to read this document, Would it give me insights as to who your family is, the values that you hold, and the way in which you manage your family? That's exactly what we should be trying to communicate through this family mission statement. Now, the document itself is beneficial, but I think what's even more productive is the conversation we have with our family members in the creation of the document. It's analogous to writing an investment policy or financial plan. Yeah, the document's great, but it's all the work and the contribution and the input that goes into the creation of it that often serves as the valuable part of the exercise. Here are a couple of thoughts, a couple of questions that I might leave you with. You can certainly discuss these with Kelly or Josh or anybody from the Strip Matter team. I really encourage you to connect with your advisors if this topic is important to you. Because for many of us, we're doing this for the first time. John, it's a really cool topic. It is something that's been on my mind, but I just don't know how to do it. Your financial advisory firm does. They've had these conversations before with other clients like you. They've seen some best practices and maybe can facilitate the conversation and the exercise. And so here's some questions that might be productive for you and your family to think about. What's the purpose of your family? What are your goals and values? What strengths does your family have, or what areas might you be a little bit weaker in? How would you like your family to be remembered? What legacy would you like to leave behind? Tell me about how you support each other or how you support other charities. What are the qualities of those charities that caused you to choose them as opposed to other things? These are questions that may be somewhat fulfilling in the process. Maybe one step to provide this financial literacy to our children is to build a curriculum. And we've developed one at PIMCO. I'm happy to share it with your financial advisory firm that they can share with you. This idea that money learning is a lifelong process, right? It doesn't happen through one course or at one particular age, but there are a number of things that we can share with our children that will help them develop financial literacy. I'm not going to sit down with a 3-year-old and talk to them about advanced income tax planning. That's just not an appropriate conversation. But there are activities that are age appropriate. And I'll give you some examples of those on the following slides. Here's one, maybe for school-age children. How about budgeting? Budgeting is a great thing. I don't necessarily like doing it, but I know it's a productive exercise. And so maybe if you have children at home that are school-aged, or maybe grandchildren at home, how do we encourage children to develop? It's not a lot of money at this younger age, but how do we get them to develop habits that will serve them well over a lifetime? And so one method that's often used is called the 3-jar methodology. The child's 9 years old, they get $9 a week in allowance. They've got certain expectations for the allowance. They've got to take out the trash and make their bed and walk the dog. I think that's an important part of the equation. But where does the $9 go? Well, maybe $3 goes into a spending jar. $3 goes into a savings jar, and $3 goes into a jar used for philanthropy. Now, when it comes to spending, I know you want to tell your kids how to spend that money. The $3 that goes in there every week. We want to tell them, gosh, don't blow the money on something frivolous. Spend it more wisely. But I'm going to encourage you not to do that. I'm going to encourage you to let our children, or to let your children, make their own choices on how they spend that money. They will learn a lot more from the mistakes they make at this younger age than they will learn from whatever advice you share with them. So let them spend that money and then later suffer the consequences that they don't have resources for something that they've determined to be more important later on. On the savings function, getting a child to take some of their current disposable income and putting it in a savings jar, that's a tough task. So maybe we help the child by identifying what they're saving for. Maybe they're saving for a new bicycle or a new computer or a new Xbox. And maybe we print out a picture of what they're saving for to help them visualize, to encourage them to stay the course of this savings endeavor. And I'd like to think they're more likely to complete that exercise with some visualization of the goal. And then, of course, when it comes to charity, children copy what we do. If we're philanthropically motivated, if we share with our children the donor advised fund that we've established and the contributions we're making to others, I'd like to think that those good habits will often rub off on our children as well. Here's another great exercise. This is probably appropriate for older kids, maybe in their teenager years or as young adults. Maybe your family is somewhat like mine. My wife always did the family vacation planning. Kids had no responsibility. They'd show up with their headphones and their backpack, and they'd get on an airplane and we'd go take a nice family vacation somewhere. And I'm not begrudging them for it, but how about this as a thought? How about at an appropriate age, we assign the family vacation not to mom or dad, but to the kids? Hey, Daniel and Margot, you own the family vacation this year. Here's the budget that mom and I will allow you to spend. You do the research. You figure out where we're going. You determine whether we're flying coach or first class. You decide if we're staying at a 4-star or a 2-star hotel. You'd make the determine. You allocate those resources. You spend that budget to produce or to plan the vacation that's most attractive to you. A couple of really important lessons that come from this exercise. Number one, I think the first thing that our children learn is, oh my gosh, vacations are expensive. I never really thought about it. I just got on the airplane when it was time to leave. I had no idea how expensive these various activities are. Number two, they realize how much effort goes into planning a vacation. And I'd like to think that they become more appreciative of that. And then the third thing, maybe the most important lesson that they learn, is how to budget, how to allocate a fixed dollar amount among the different activities that might go into a family vacation. Philanthropy, I think, is a great way to instill the values in our children. I know that your advisory team can guide you on the right way to give to charity. It's not about giving away more money. It's about being more productive with the money that you are giving. I know that for many of us, we write a check to charity, and I appreciate the generosity, but I'd like to think there are better ways to give to charity. I hope that all of you have established a donor advised fund, or at least talked to Josh about what a donor advised fund is and how that can help you make your charitable giving more productive, both for yourselves and for the receiving entity. And so here's some questions that we would pose that you think about and discuss among your family members and with your advisors about your philanthropic activities. But what I really want to encourage you to do is to get your children involved. When you establish that donor advised fund and make a contribution to it, tell your kids about it. When it's time to make distributions from it, encourage the children to become part of that decision-making process, to have them identify a couple of charities that they would like to support. And I think that hands-on experience will help us pass along those important values to our kids. The final activity that I'll leave you with is to hold a family meeting. It doesn't have to be that formal, but a family gathering to talk about a number of different things, to talk about provide some financial education. So maybe bring in a guest speaker who talks about a business or about asset allocation or about tax planning or charitable giving or whatever the topic might be that's appropriate for your family. Maybe you use it as an opportunity for the family to catch up, to talk about what's going on in their lives, about things that they're motivated to achieve or concerns that they might have. And then maybe the key to the family meeting is to do something that's develops bonds among the family members. We all take a class together. We all go to a ball game together and rent out a skybox. We wind up doing something. We all go down to the soup kitchen and wind up volunteering our time, doing something that brings the family together. In today's fast-paced world, I think what happens to many families is we wind up separating and doing our own activities. The purpose of the family meeting is to facilitate this conversation and this opportunity for lifelong learning so that we can pass along the values that are important to us, to our children. Kelly, I want to thank you for the time. I hope that the conversation has been helpful. I want to see if you have any questions or any comments that you'd like to share with our friends today.
John, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for us? If you do, go ahead and type them in, but I will tell you, I have been doing this for 20 years. My children are ages soon to be 14, all the way to 25. This was a great reminder for myself. I've got my 25-year-old moving out of state, launching into his first career, one in college who does that planning, and she calls and she's like, Mom, this hotel is super expensive. You know, what else should I look at? So they're asking for those things. And then I think about my younger two, there's a 6-year age gap between the 2 older ones and then the younger ones. And it's like, did I skip something somewhere with them? So I do need to go back in that. Thank you so much. And I know a lot of our clients who are on here can use this for their grandchildren. They also have, some of them have children in college or just launching out. So this was absolutely fantastic.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been great to partner with you again. And I've really enjoyed meeting with your firm and the great work that you do for your clients. So we thank you for the opportunity to be with you today.
Well, thank you. And everybody, thank you again for joining us. We have these educational webinars every single month. We have educational classes as well at the local colleges. So please visit stripmatterwealth.com for our calendar of events that will show all the webinar schedule, as well as that class schedule, as well as our charitable events that we have going on. We also have weekly market newsletters as well as monthly retirement newsletters. So if you're not already receiving those, you can sign up there as well. But again, everybody, thank you so much for your time today and have a wonderful afternoon.